We're just waiting as the attendees fill in. More people are joining. Welcome all. Give it a minute so that everybody can join. Very good. I think that's about everybody to join. I want to welcome everyone, and let's see. Sean, do we want to just have a speaker view, or do you want to be on, or how do you? What's your preference? Right now, everyone can see all of us, right?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, excellent. So welcome everyone. I'm Alameda County Supervisor David Halbert. I invited and called the town hall meeting to talk about the current status of the eviction moratorium, just to provide information on where we are, how we got here, some information about what our team at the Alameda County has done to process applications for rental assistance, and to answer any questions. Tonight is not to discuss, or rather to make progress on lifting the eviction moratorium. That's not before us today. That's something that would require the full board to do. And so the board recently did discuss perhaps placing an item on the agenda. That item did not receive majority support from the board. And so that's the status that we currently are in. I respect the majority of the board. That's how we make decisions. And so while I would like to see us at least discuss this at a full agendized meeting, we just won't be doing that. And that's okay. Again, I respect the majority of the board. However, I do think it's important that we share with the public information that we do have. And so I want to hear from you, and I also want to share information with you. The way that I've heard many people is by logging into a special email account that we've created. We've sent out the link. We've received numerous emails from rental housing providers, basically asking for feedback on how much outstanding rent they're experienced as a loss, and for how long, and by unit count, so we can get some data and statistics on specifically lost rent. And why is that important? Well, I'll tell you that we've received 15,000 applications, just over 15,000 applications. This is information I received from our community development agency. We've processed just over 13,000 of those applications. So a large number of applications processed, about a little over 2,000 yet to go. We have approved for rental assistance about 8,700 of those applications. That means we've denied about 4,500 applications. Reasons for denial have been several. One, applicant lives out of town, so they've applied for rental assistance. They don't live in our county. They live out of the county, or they report income that is above the 80th percentile of mean average income in Alameda County. So in other words, they make too much money or more than what would qualify for rental assistance. We've paid out directly to landlords on behalf of their tenants in the application process, $112 million. And so that's how much has been spent to help with rental assistance. We have about $3 million left, so we're almost at the end of that. However, we're also looking at, we're working with the state to request an additional $45 million that they may be able to reallocate. We're also working with the federal government to perhaps increase the amount of rental assistance that would be provided to us. However, we already know that those that make more than 80% of the mean average income will not qualify. And so while we could have as much as, by quick math, 112 million plus 3 million, 115, maybe another 45, maybe a total of $160 million to go towards rent, that there will be a significant number of people that will be denied because they make too much money. Also, it's important to note that the programs have a limited number of months attached to them. So even if you make less than 80%, if you've already received 15 months of rental assistance and you have not paid rent for longer than that time frame, you just won't be eligible for an additional amount. So we know that there will be those people that would be continuing to accrue a debt to their housing provider. And so it's important that we keep these numbers in mind, and it's important that we continue to track them. Our community development agency has, in fact, just recently, I think maybe even today or imminently, is working on their own portal to have people log in and enter the information, similar information that I've already asked for, but into their system, which will allow for people to also provide the information of how much rent is owed to them. The point being that we really want to get a handle on one, how much money we can provide for rental assistance, and two, what the gap is between those that aren't covered, so that at some point everyone can be made whole. Another thing that I asked my CDA to Community Development Agency to share with us are the other counties around the state that have programs in place around eviction moratoriums, and very, very few. Los Angeles has recently announced that by the end of the year, they will be phasing out their eviction moratorium, that Marin County will expire theirs on September 30th. And I believe it's also San Diego City that will expire on October 1st. That will leave, I think, pretty much just Sonoma County. Theirs is still in place. I also have had many questions about, so when will this go away? How will it go away? What's the process for keeping the moratorium in place, and how will we ever get out of this? And I want everybody to note that right now, our eviction moratorium is not tied to the state of California. It was at one point, but it's not anymore. It's tied directly to our health clerk, health officer rather, that's Dr. Moss, who continues to have a emergency health order in place. And the Board of Supervisors, several years ago, when they first initiated this, they took the steps to tie to the eviction moratorium to 60 days after our own local health clerk calls off the emergency health order. So I believe that there's a large amount of latitude there for the health officer to continue to have that in place. And there's not, it's not a board decision to tell him how to do his job in that regard. And so I would have to refer any questions about when the health order would go away to him. But I do know that if and when he declares the health emergency to be over, it would be 60 days after that time frame that the health the eviction moratorium would go away. Sean, you might want to mute if you want, unless you're talking, just go ahead and mute yourself. That would be good. So the other question that I've had is, indeed, we've read about in the paper that Alameda County is in a lawsuit over the eviction moratorium, and I can tell you that indeed we are. I can't say a whole lot more than that, and would ask anybody that would want to learn more about that to just Google it, research it, do your homework. I can tell you that we've hired outside counsel to defend us in that lawsuit, and that's really not much more I can comment than that. With that, I think I would like to continue to reiterate that stay tuned for more information around the health officers' direction and them lifting the emergency order that we're under, because we can't do anything until then, and 60 days after that would be the time that eviction moratorium would expire. It can't expire before that unless we modify our ordinance. Secondly, I would ask you to stay tuned for more information about when additional monies will come from the state and federal government. We're again applying for $45 million more, and we're hoping then we feel that we can make everybody whole, at least under 80% average income, and at least for the 15 months make rent whole. But we also know there will be a gap of those that make more than 80%, just automatic, they're just not going to qualify. And for those more than 15 months, not going to qualify for additional funding. I've had the question, so what does that mean for a housing provider? What can they do? The debt is still there. It still accrues. It's just that right now, the only situation remedy then is the courts system. I know that's not a great answer, but that's what we're left with. Separately, there's a large dialogue around when we lift the eviction moratorium, or when that happens, the expectation or the fear of mass evictions. We're constantly aware of that as a possibility and want to guard against that if at all possible. And so we're going to be working on ways to alleviate that if at all possible. A lot of dialogue, and even tomorrow will be a discussion in our work study session about proposals for what we call tenants' rights. And we've already talked about these potential ordinances for many, many months, over a year, and well discussed and flushed out. Not everybody agrees with them, and nothing is a perfect scenario, but we continue to work hard on finding ways to come together and provide fair protections, many of which are already provided by the state of California for those that truly need to be protected. But also realizing that every story is different. Every tenant is a different situation. Every housing provider is a different situation. So a bit of a separate issue to the moratorium, but rather stay tuned. And even tomorrow will be an update on tenants' rights. Another data point, another point to talk about those. That said, again, I'm focusing today primarily on the stories of rental housing providers that have not been able to receive rental assistance, and also to ask that if you are in that situation, haven't been able to receive, tenant doesn't qualify, tenant won't cooperate, however that comes about, that you would send an email. And Sean, here's where I will ask you to make sure that everybody knows what that email address is if they don't know it already. Maybe you can just read it off to everyone so that they know, if they haven't already done so, how to weigh in on their particular situation. Again, we want to document to the best that we can, just to get a feeling for what is not going to be covered. You've applied and been denied. You haven't even applied yet. your tenant has gone past the 15 months, but you already received 15 months. Well, those extra months, you're not going to have coverage. So we want to get a feeling for what that is. It's very important to us to do that. So Sean, do you have that email address at the ready?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat so everyone can get it from there. Okay,
very good. Thus far, we've had an overwhelming number of emails that have come in to share rental housing providers how much they have not received, and we're trying to get a handle on that. Again, TELL Dist1, that's District 1, tell District 1 at acgov.org. TELLDIST1 at acgov.org. We do have a couple of minutes for Q&A. I just want to leave though with one thought. I do have an open door policy, especially for important discussions like these, like we have tonight. I do encourage you to reach out to my office and keep in touch. Don't hesitate to ask questions. Don't hesitate to share your story individually. If you don't do so tonight, or you pass on to a colleague or a friend, I'm here to listen to you, the people. So we have 225 people listening to the information that we've provided, listening to where we are, hopefully having answered some of those questions. But if there are any remaining questions, we have some additional time to address them. And I see people already putting their hands up. What I would also say is we're not limited to 3 minutes of dialogue or talk. This isn't a regular agendized meeting. There's a chat feature that we can use. And so I believe a chat is enabled, and I'll ask Sean to help read off questions as they come in. We can also have a dialogue, but I would encourage you to type in your comments into chat or questions into chat, because that's why we have that feature. So that said, we have some speakers already with their hands raised. Iona Clark, and could ITD allow Iona Clark to ask a question?
Hi, can you hear me?
There you go, yes.
Thank you very much. I'll be really quick. First, I just checked the chat, and while I got the email, it's still disabled. It seems to be for us to input.
Okay.
What I wanted to point out,
before you do that, can ITD fix that? Would that be okay? Chat is disabled. Can we enable it?
Yes, 1 second.
All right, thank you. All right, go ahead.
I just have a question that I'm sure people have thought of. It's not original, that I'm hoping you can take back to the supervisors. And that is, if renters earn more than 80% of AMI and therefore do not qualify for assistance, then how is it that the eviction moratorium still applies to them? Thank you very much. That is my question.
So the eviction moratorium applies to everybody. There are limited circumstances if you want to sell the property, things like that. If there's a health and safety issue, there are exceptions, limited and narrow exceptions, but otherwise it applies to everyone. However, the rental assistance funds are only going to go to those that earn less than 80%. That means that your only other remedy, as I understand it, is the courts system. The debt accrues, and you have the ability to take them to court. And honestly, I believe that that's the situation we're in, that indeed you can't evict, and indeed they're not going to qualify for rental assistance. And so the position that you're in is to take them to court when that becomes an option. I know that there are, it's fraught with limitations on how much can be sought in court. And these are all reasons why I feel that modifications should be made to allow for that situation. As I mentioned, until the majority of the board would like to discuss that, we can't put that on an agenda. But I believe that's the situation that we're in. Dan Pan.
Oh, hi, my name is Dan. I'm a board member of BAHN. Thank you so much, Mr. Halbert, for your hard work. I heard a lot from our members for what you have done. I sent a letter to your email, tell district at that one, and also sent to other supervisors as well. That's our voice, and that's our concern, and that's our situation. So really bad. We talked to our members. Almost, I can believe 80% of them has a lot of loss of rental loss. I just want to see myself. I'm a housing permit as well, as you can see. I have two tenants right now. They haven't paid for more than 2 years, and we cannot do anything. The problem is I was very upset. They paid some when they feel like the eviction moratorium was going to end, but they seems like Alameda County staff keep tell the renter said you don't need to pay. You can rent housing providers cannot do anything, so they stop pay again. Back and forth. We have a PM, we have property managers. They are very upset. Sometimes they even argue with them and front with them, and they seems like they want to sue them for harassment or whatever. We are the hosting providers push the property managers to collect the rent. We have negative income for sure. Me, 2 properties, we didn't have any profit. We're not seeing money. And for sure, we give them pressure, and they give the renter pressure, and then the renters are not very happy. It's a very, very sad situation, and we feel like the government didn't do well as part of those. It seems like encourage the renters not to pay. I don't know if they seems like from a PM they work, and seems like they do have money, but. As long as they seems like they say, oh, they keep telling the property manager, they say, you cannot do anything if I don't pay. So that's the situation. And also I have a question. Number one, you said we have 15 a month for the rental assistance. So how about the other month more than 15%? So if the eviction moratorium cannot 100%, I mean, line with the rental, the eviction moratorium. So basically, the housing providers has to eat all the loss for the ones the rental program cannot cover. And you said we can go to the court, but I talked to my PM. They said no, even attorney accept those kind of a case. In Alameda County, they said you have to wait until the eviction moratorium has been lifted. So going to the court, it definitely is not a solution for us. At least right now, even the law firm reject all those cases. And also I have another question. You said that according to the policy, is 60 days after the health, whatever emergency ends, the eviction moratorium can end. We understand supervisors are depending on the health eviction, I mean the emergency policies, but to us, we cannot, I mean, Board of Supervisors cannot rely on that to, as I can see, cannot find the excuse for them to say, you have to end this, then we can lift the eviction moratorium. So no matter what, that's the decision Board of Supervisors made to continue extend the eviction moratorium, no matter if the health emergency ends or not. So I just want to say, yeah, supervisor of Alameda should be responsible for the eviction moratorium, no matter what, because they are the one to pass the eviction moratorium. Okay,
Thank
that's
you, Dan. I
I,
appreciate that. No, I really appreciate that. Let's move on to the next speaker, Joshua Polston. Let me just reiterate that indeed legal remedies still exist. I know that it's difficult to take people to court. It takes time, it takes money. And what I'll take back is if somebody is saying, even though you can pay rent, to not pay rent, they should also remind people that they're still going to have a credit debt, and it will probably affect their credit, perhaps, not sure, but it would also certainly perhaps be held up in court. So Joshua Polston, next speaker. Dan, thank you very much for your comments.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm Joshua Polston. I'm also a board member with the East Bay Rental Housing Association. And I just wanted to share two ideas, kind of one is a thought and one is a question. The first one is the thought. And that was, and you mentioned it in your opener, that there is this, I would call it a drumbeat from, much of the tenant lobby, that there is this specter of mass evictions. And I would kind of throw out there a couple things. Number one, I think this should be based on data. And if you look at other jurisdictions that have lifted their eviction moratoriums, which is essentially 98% of the rest of the country, you have not seen that. Okay, so that's data. And I think there needs to be more data and less, perhaps, I would call it hysteria. People would call it spirited conversation, call it what you will. So that's number one. And on that idea of mass evictions, I wonder if in a way, this county and also city process, or I should say this policy of the eviction moratorium has kind of created a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this is why I'm saying this. When I purchased one of my small buildings, I had a fourplex that was owned by a bank a few years ago. It was essentially in receivership, and the bank, for whatever reason, decided not to collect rent for 18 months prior to my purchasing the building. There were 4 units, 3 of them were occupied. And as I mentioned, those 3 tenants had not paid rent for the decisions of the bank, don't know why, for 18 months. And when I got that building, I reached out to each of the tenants, and within 2 to 3 months, every single one of those people were evicted because they didn't pay the rent. Because after not paying the rent for so long, tenants, it is extremely difficult to turn a non-paying tenant into a paying tenant. So I think that's just a thought to keep in mind, that are we not setting a stumbling block before the blind here? So and then my last part is actually a question. And that is, this relates to the lawsuit. And I know, of course, in your role as a county supervisor, you have a fiduciary responsibility to the county, and there are obviously privileged conversations. And you've also stated on the record that you do want to see a resolution and an end to the moratorium. And just a thought, without, as I said, getting into any privileged conversations, have there been or can there be a discussion in open session as to, at the end of the day, the county is going to spend a lot of money to defend itself in a lawsuit. Might it be simpler just to change the public policy? And I don't know if those kinds of discussions happen. So it's just kind of more of a question without, revealing anything obviously privileged.
Yeah, so a good point. And just to clarify, indeed, right now, as I mentioned, the health eviction moratorium will expire on its own at 60 days after the health officer chooses to lift the emergency health order. However, that's because that's the way the ordinance is written. Ordinances can be changed, and so the majority of the board could discuss and vote to change the ordinance, which would have a different path. And I tried to have that item placed on the agenda, but there wasn't agreement on placing that item on the agenda. So we haven't even been able to discuss in open session perhaps making changes to our ordinance or eliminating it altogether. Until we do that, if we don't move to make a change to the ordinance in place, we're left with the ordinance in place. And so just to make it very clear, I've sought to discuss the item. It's not receiving the support to be placed on the agenda, so we can't even discuss making changes. And I've said that I certainly support making changes to the eviction moratorium. I haven't said what kinds of changes or how many changes or anything beyond that. But I certainly believe that that there are people that are just not paying rent, will accrue debt, and I don't think that's they don't qualify for assistance. They don't have a need because they haven't lost income due to COVID, and therefore don't really qualify for rental assistance. So I'm open to making those changes, but until we put it on an agenda, we're precluded from making changes. And without making changes, that's all we can do is wait for the health officer to make their changes. We have a large number of messages in the chat. Sean, I'll let you try to go through those and just read them out loud so that we'll take a couple from the chat, as well as people that if your hand is raised and you haven't put it in the chat, then we'll get to you as well. But let's go back and forth from chat. So I'll let you pick it out.
Yeah, so you have one that has 3 questions, and I think you answered them pretty much all of them. But we'll just read them out and figure it out. So on what basis did the Board of Supervisors base their decision to terminate the eviction moratorium 60 days after the health officer lifts the restrictions? Well, you already answered that. That's kind of like what we have to do when the board decides to go in line with whatever the health officer decides.
Hey, so just
question,
to stop you there, Sean, I think what they're asking is who came up with the idea 60 days after the health officer issues the lifts it? That decision was made before I was on the board, right? That's the decision to craft the ordinance in that way was before I joined the board, and so I can't really comment to that. I can surmise that indeed the idea of a eviction moratorium from the very beginning, from my perspective, and I wasn't on the board at the time, but it was people, we didn't know at the time how bad COVID would be, how long it would be with us, how many people would be affected, and for how long. We were sheltered in place. People couldn't go to work. A lot of people are paycheck to paycheck and would be evicted or could very well be evicted. And so we didn't know how long a vaccine would take. We didn't know how effective the vaccine would be. But as I've said in open session, all of that much of that has changed as we become vaccinated, as we see the number of deaths go down, as we see the economy back open, as we see masking going away, social distancing requirements going away. We're not going to say we're entirely back to normal, but we're close, a lot closer than we were when the eviction moratorium was put into place. But I can't tell you why they picked 60 days the way they crafted the ordinance at this time. So what's the other questions there, Sean?
So is there a process of revoking ordinances passed by the Board of Supervisors since the population, at least at large, does not have a say on decisions that were made? So I guess they're asking, what
Put it
did
on an
the
agenda.
board, to change that?
It has to be on an agenda. It has to have 3 votes to do that. And right now,
We tried.
there's not, I tried to put it on an agenda and we don't have the support to do that.
So lastly, since the motive for the moratorium was to address issues related to COVID, why is it so broadly implemented to infringe on the rights of landlords who are facing issues to make ends meet due to tenants not paying their rent?
Yeah, that's the ordinance that was put in place before me, and I think, again, a lot has changed since that time, and I'm trying to bring the discussion back before us so that we can talk about exactly those topics.
So I got one more question. No, that's a statement. One more.
Let's go back to a speaker, and then actually, Sean, you can sift through those things that have already been answered. Let's skip over. Let's just look for
Sure.
those new, maybe comments or new bits of information or new questions. But for now, Erwin Yuen, you have the mic.
Hey,
You're
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
I can now. Yep.
Yeah, I'm one of the fortunate ones that did get the 15th months, but unfortunately, I haven't gotten $1 from my renter since September 15th. I think I tried to email you about this, but my question is when is the agenda, or when can you put it back on the agenda? And I understand you're supporting a lot of landlords in the situation, and I greatly appreciate it, by the way. But when can you put it back on the agenda again, or try to get at least the addendum, so that at least there are terms and conditions in which tenants do need to comply? I mean, zero rent, not answering a question, can't even post the message to them asking them for the current financial situation. It's getting to a point where even like, what did our governor say? They have to pay 25%. Well, that didn't even show up on the moratorium at all. Things like that. I have quotes where the governor says you need to pay 25% to protect yourself, to not get evicted. Whatever happened to all those things? It's difficult. I just want to know, when can you try to get this back on the vote or something again?
Very good. So in case we don't know, go ahead, Sean.
Erwin, where do you live?
I live in Fremont.
And how many times have you and I gone back and forth?
A lot, and I know.
Okay.
It's been tough.
A lot.
So just to clarify for everyone, what has happened is I took it upon myself to request that we would put an item on the agenda to discuss the eviction moratorium for potential action, modification, rescission, whatever we have within our purview. I can't unilaterally place an item on the agenda. Instead, it takes in this case, it would require 3 votes of the board even to discuss it. There was only one other vote of support to put the item on a future agenda. And so we tried and were denied the opportunity to put the item on a future agenda. We can keep trying, but we have to be prudent about how we do that. We don't do that every week. Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, the point of the conversation where it pertains to like Fremont, like Erwin, like you live on the border, and you and I have talked about this like for a long time. Like, we need to get you guys and others that live on that side to at least send emails, calls to Richard Valley, because we need that 3rd vote. If we don't get that 3rd vote, we're stuck.
Yeah. Well, I understand it, and I did, by the way, call them after I got your message, by the way. And I did get a call back, but it didn't help, by the way. Okay. But and I know a lot of, I hate to say this, landlords that live on that other side that don't know what's going on. Okay.
Right.
If they knew about this, I'm pretty sure they would be too happy. But the other question I have is, there's an attorney called Bornstein who mentioned something about the 28th is a big day. Do you know anything about that, Supervisor, regarding that? It's something to do with the lawsuit. The hearing is the first day, is the 28th. It's a big day.
I don't know, but I also wouldn't be able to comment on an item that we're in litigation on. Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate it. I understand, and by the way, it's called SC 500. I tried to post it. You can sue. I did get a judgment in small claims, and I got to go to civil now to get more additional. But it doesn't mean I'm going to get my money, but I'm at least applying pressure from not the landlord. The landlord is no longer doing harassments. The collection agency is doing it now. We'll leave it at that.
Got it. So indeed, call your supervisor, and obviously I know you live in my part of Fremont, but but you know that you have my support. Until we have three, it's going to be very difficult to make any changes. I also appreciate you making the comment, as I've noted, that we already know there are going to be a lot of people with the only remedy of going to the courts. Those that make more than 80%, those that have not paid for over 15 months. You've been able to do that in small claims court, which has a limitation. You'll be able to continue in civil court. I know it's a long and tedious process. Sean, anything new from the chats?
Yeah, I think there's a pretty good question that Audrey has. Is there anything we can do to help encourage the health officer to end the health emergency?
I think it's fair game to always continue to ask. I've asked as well, what metrics are acceptable. When would we know that if nobody contracted COVID and nobody was in the hospital and nobody was dying from COVID, then would you lift it? At what stage, between now and then, COVID isn't going to go away, but also how long, does it have to be? I think data around that would be, and asking them to provide data around what conditions would they consider lifting the moratorium. I know that it's a complex answer, multifaceted, multivariable problem there to solve for. You're looking at infection rates, you're looking at infection numbers, you're looking at hospitalizations and deaths, but all indications and all commentary from the health officer is that COVID is going away. So I would ask him, what do the metrics need to be in order to lift this? Or you're just going to wait till the end of the year or whatever. I know that they're concerned that we go into the fall and that numbers will spike again. So I'm sure that'll be part of his answer as well. What else, Sean? Anything else?
I think Ileana has a great question. She goes, hey, do we have any power as voters to get items on the board agenda?
I don't know of a legal mechanism to do that. I've always operated under the notion that if the community wants something discussed, this is going back to days on the school board, days as mayor. If the community is asking for an item to be discussed, that we would do that. But I don't know of a legal mechanism to do that, so I can't answer that fully. Let's go back to speakers. Rose Pratt Nervous. Rose?
Yes.
I think you muted yourself just now, Rose.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Now can you hear me? Good.
Yes.
And some people may say why, but I have been blessed during this process of the moratorium because most of my tenants are Section 8. And so they continue to pay and most of my tenants continue to pay. But my problem has been a tenant who is destroying my place. And I've had like 3 or 4 tenants move because they are so horrible. And I can't, let me see, 1, 2, 3. And I can't with good faith without telling them those people are loud, they're doing this stuff, and I don't know what to do. And I have another tenant in who is popping out her screens, like the window screens. And Section 8 says that they have to have them and I can be violated. So now I'm replacing window screens all the time. And so I am going to talk to Section 8, but they tell me I still got to tell them, like one girl hasn't paid her rent for 4 months, but it's $161 on a $2,200 rent. So you don't want to cut your nose off to spite your face, as my mom would say to me. But it is just, oh my God, the kid took a hockey stick and tore up the closet door. So, I mean, there to me, there's a health and safety issue. But I just don't know how exactly to do that, because people with these issues are caught up in this moratorium too, not just not paying. But I'm afraid to see what my place is going to look like. You know, I could have $20,000 worth of damage once they get gone, but I can't get them out.
Yeah, Rose, what you're bringing up is a perfect example of what we could discuss about making modifications to the moratorium that we have in place. We could at least discuss how a landlord would be able to use the clear evidence of destruction of property as a reason to allow eviction to proceed. It's a perfect example of what I would like to bring to discuss a way to perhaps modify. Thank you for sharing that. I will continue to keep that story and share with it and relay to my colleagues what I heard you say.
And I have
Thank
one more thing too, and this can happen in that because of the moratorium, people are letting other people come and live with them. And so the properties are having more people in them than they were intended to have. And so now when this happens, you no longer can't get rid of them. You have to now, if they're longer than 30 days, have to get rid of the people that they allowed to come in to stay in their place.
Yeah. And not only that, more wear and tear on your property than you anticipated. And I hear you. That's very, very good feedback. I appreciate that. More people moving in than you rented to. Okay.
The water bill. That's it. That's all I got to say. The water bill.
The water bill. Yeah. Sean, we're going to make sure that we can capture all of the messages that were typed in to this chat. And I'll ask ITD to just make sure that we're doing that, whether we screenshot it or find a way to keep it. Let's keep going through to speakers. Susan Marchiona.
Hi.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, hi. Thank you. I'm interested. Well, a couple of things. I mean, this has just been horrible. I put a note in the chat, but my question is, it's not. You talk a lot about the money, and obviously that's important. But I have been dealing with somebody who's, and I've written to you like 8 or 9 times. So if you don't know who I am, that means you're not reading my messages to you, and I'm really, that's distressing.
No, I think Susan,
Yeah.
Susan, you know, I responded to every email.
No, you didn't respond to every email, but you did respond to some. But that doesn't tell me that Supervisor Hobart has received all my message. But that's beside the point. I'm going to court tomorrow, actually, because I finally had to file an elder abuse restraining order against my tenant. And I might not win the move out order that I am seeking. And my concern is that then he's going to become even more emboldened and even more hostile because he knows that I'm powerless. And I live 20 feet in back of him. And I haven't even been sleeping at my house because I don't feel safe here. And I don't know if that's even enough to meet the health and safety exemption. And that's just, I can't tell you, I've aged like 5 years in the past year, and I can't get anybody to listen to me. I'm hoping this judge will listen to me, but if anybody else is in this same situation, consider an elder abuse restraining order, because it's the only thing that I have found. And I've worked my butt off trying to get ready for this session tomorrow, and I'm just praying that this judge will see sense. He's already violated the restraining order 4 times.
Susan, please keep us posted on what happens in your suit tomorrow, your court date tomorrow.
How would you like me to keep you posted?
Email. Sean and you are good at email. That's the best way. It has a record. Keeps it. We have a record that way. We keep all of our emails. Yeah.
Okay, but my point, thank you, and I will. The point is that I think it's really important to recognize that these situations are not static. They are changing. They're dynamic. People are getting frustrated. They're caught and trapped in situations that are terrible. And I'm maybe in a And I'm in Berkeley too, so I have the Berkeley City Council to deal with on top of you guys. But it's a very real toll this is taking on people emotionally, physically, spiritually. This has just been a horrible year for me. And I don't think you talk about that enough. It's not just dollars and cents. My entire community is worried about me. It ripples out. My children are worried about me. They're worried about my mental health. They're worried about my physical health. They're worried that this guy is going to do something crazy. And I'm trapped here in the back of this lot where nobody can see me or see him. He leaves the windows wide open 24/7. He doesn't care anything about my safety. And it's all about him.
Yes,
So-
one of the chat people here just mentioned that you're not alone. They're experiencing the same thing, and so I'll take that back as feedback to everyone I talk to, my colleagues included. It's not just about the money. It's about your mental health and personal safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to Shawnee Brown.
Hi, thank you, Supervisor Howard. I represent East Bay Rental Housing Association, and I am at the forefront of speaking to rental housing providers every day about ERAP payments that they haven't received, although the tenants have received the money, and how are they supposed to recoup that funding that the tenant received but did not pay. Also, property owners feel like they have to sell their properties right now. There's nothing they can do. For property owners that do not own their properties, that have to pay mortgages, they feel like there's nothing left to do but sell their property. So what are some contingencies that are in place for those tenants who have received funding and have not paid the owners?
Danny, yeah, I was under the impression that any of the ERAP assistance was paid directly to landlords, to housing.
No.
Huh.
No, some has gone to tenants, and the tenants have
Let's take it offline.
acknowledged.
Let's take that specific offline directly to us. Let's open a dialogue. Let's have a Zoom call tomorrow to understand that, because indeed, if that's the case, I need to know that. I will bring that up tomorrow to the best of, at least the next time we talk about this as a board. What I'm hearing is that you're telling me some money has gone directly to tenants and not to landlords. So
Correct.
let's
And the tenants
clarify
have
that.
acknowledged, the residents have acknowledged receiving the funding and still did not pay the owner.
Let's find out exactly what that is. I need to understand that person by person. Thank you. And Shani, please don't forget, everybody needs to be sending an email with information. We're just asking, for who is owed rent and their unit and their address and their contact information. So just to keep track of who's owed what, to try to get the best of our ability. So send that message in. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Tony
Thank
Smith.
you.
Yep. Tony.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm actually crafting an email to you right now to that email address that you've provided. I purchased a fourplex in December of 2019, and all of the tenants were in the building. This is not my first rental property. I sold other rental properties to purchase this one. And so I did that because I'm very handy and I like to take care of the property myself. And so 3 of the tenants are great. They're absolutely not a problem at all. They respect each other and they respect the common areas of the property. And then I have a 4th tenant who is a criminal. They brought a stolen vehicle onto the property, disassembled it and sold it for parts right there in the parking lot, about 5 feet from somebody's bedroom. There was more than 6 criminals on site that night. There's nothing I could do about that. They are doing drugs in the parking lot. They are intimidating the other tenants of the building. They do partying until 5 and 6 in the morning and not allowing other people to have rest and sleep. And you know, there's I have Alan Orwitz retained, and he says that all of this goes just below the level of allowing the current moratorium allowing us to proceed, you know, given the current moratorium. It's just because the other tenants, because the tenant's not using a gun, because he wasn't doing these sorts of things, he's not daily threatening, and basically urinating all over the whole property and things like this. And so all of my tenants have paid money all the way through the moratorium. They've all paid their rent. So just like this other person who is not concerned about the money, I feel this is the same way. This is a person who's repeatedly committing criminal activity on the property, and the other tenants are scared. The other tenants complain to me every single week. One of the tenants complain about one thing or another, about them just, you know, simply just being a bad neighbor and not allowing them to use the laundry room, you know, intimidating them to the point of not letting them use the laundry room.
Certainly illegal activity. I would I know you've thought of it, likely. It's a whole nother topic. Call the police, but I know that even that's concerning because.
Yes, sir. I have police reports.
Yeah.
I've also asked all the other tenants when they're doing illegal things to call the police and notify me. You know, there's some of the language in there about my responsibility as a property owner and a home provider is I have a duty to provide a space for these people to live in a safe environment where they can have quiet enjoyment. And this one tenant is an absolute nightmare. And they've retained counsel now too, and they are sending me letters about how I'm harassing them. And it's just an absolute mess. It's just an absolute mess, and this needs to stop.
So I would say, Tony, don't rule out joining other lawsuits that are in place. That's up to you. But I see in the chat there's an offer from somebody that said that that's something that they could talk with you about. I also note, as you've described, we have unintentionally created a culture of lawlessness where too many people just feel that they're emboldened and can break the law because there's no consequences or.
And I guess in addition to just understanding that there's a moratorium and I want it to go away completely, but you know, you're talking about modifying it, which I think is a great idea. The first thing that came to mind when I heard you say that several months ago in open session was, let's just get the criminal activity and the things that are unrelated to COVID, get the courts working again, you know, and then allow the people who have some sort of evidence of some sort of COVID thing to let that play out, you know, and the money get dealt out and, you know, all those sorts of things. But things that have nothing to do with COVID and people are just being bad actors, just to be bad actors, it needs to be moved forward with that.
Well, I think I've even gone further to say, I don't know how anybody can claim that they have more than a few months of effect from COVID. I mean, how many times can you get it? How long does it last? And how long does it take to find a job? Because you can't have it for that long. I don't know how we expect somebody to say that COVID has kept them unable to pay for so long. That excuse only goes so long with me. You can't have COVID for that many. Now, if you want to, maybe there's some long COVID stories where people truly have been debilitated for that long, a doctor's note to that effect. Okay, then let's look at that. But I don't see that happening. So that's, I want you to know that's where my head is at. Butch Hutchinson, when we've got a lot, we're not going to get through everybody. but we're going to keep a note of all the text chats and things like that. Try to answer everything after the fact if we need to. Butch Hutchinson, you're up. Go ahead, Butch.
Hi, it's Brandy.
Oh, Brandy. Oh, B. I'm
okay.
sorry. Yeah, it says B Hutchinson.
Yeah, it's just my automatic. I work for a large property management company, and we have properties all over the United States and multiple states. And quite frankly, Alameda, Berkeley are the most challenging out of, you know, half of the United States to deal with and work with. Everything that everybody has said couldn't be more truer. Our tenants are basically running amok. We have no authority. Our leases are pointless. I work in affordable housing. So I have HUD project-based Section 8 apartments and low income, which is tax credit, you know, for income based for rent limits and so forth. And I don't think nobody ever took into consideration that the impact that it has put on our project-based properties, where people are telling from the city and from, you know, other agencies and activists, you don't have to pay your rent. And I have HUD properties, which their rent is based off their income, right? So their rent is 30% of their annual adjusted income. Why on God's green earth are they not required to pay their rent if all they have to do is come in and do an income recertification? I have a total of almost $300,000 outstanding for 5 properties, 3 of which are HUD properties. I have a 63 unit complex that owes $23,000 in tenant rent, where their rent is subsidized by HUD based on their income, right? It makes no sense. I have a 40 unit complex, you guys, that tenants owe $47,000. Their rent again is based off of their income. I have a 92 unit property, $53,000 is outstanding for tenant rent. Why were they even included in this? Their rent's based off of their income. We cannot do nothing. The attorneys will not work with us. We do have major cases. I have, for example, just 2 alone at a particular property in Berkeley, which again is extra special. But we have damages in the unit. One set of damages is over $8,500. Another set of damages is over $10,000. And it's not sufficient enough for us to be able to evict them because, oh, the moratorium, oh, the moratorium. Somebody said that we can't even serve notices. Do you know we're only allowed to say you have a balance due? That's the advice from our attorneys and from what they understand for what we can do and take action. We are, and then we're held accountable as landlords. We are so held accountable and being attacked by various committees and tenant advocates, you know, for not enforcing, you know, this against neighbor Joe and this against neighbor John, because they can't get along and I can't do nothing because it's not enough. All I can do, and this is my comical, you know, entrance is, you know, all I could do is send them a strongly worded letter to behave. It means nothing. Our leases mean nothing. Our roles as professionals in this industry, as business owners, we have created a nightmare for ourselves by not allowing us to enforce our lease and hold people accountable and even make them prove you have a hardship. Half of these people are leaving our properties and going and buying new homes. We have people leaving. I have a tenant who has never paid rent since she moved in Pleasanton. Never. She owes over $60,000. And no hardship, and she does not qualify for help because she does not qualify. And I still can't make her pay anything. It is beyond frustrating out here for all of us. It is very stressful. And I'll say one last thing. We talk about hardships and we talk about, I want the city to remember, or these people, whoever's making these decisions, oh, hardship this, hardship that. The job industry out there, jobs are in high demand. We can't hire people anymore. People are leaving left and right. They don't want to deal with this anymore. Who's going to be left holding the bag? But a few people who are dedicated and believe in what they do and why they do it. The amount of stress is immeasurable for the ones actually left holding the bag at the end of the day. So
Brandy,
please,
I hear
please
you.
make a difference.
Yeah, I hear you, and I just got to sympathize with you. What you've called out too is a potential, another unintended consequence. People are going to leave the market. They're going to sell They're going to not come and build much needed housing in the future. They're going
But
to.
they're not even going to have employees. We can't even hire people. We can't pay anybody enough anymore to put up with this. So we have no staff. So not only are things running amok, but we're not being able to staff and employ people because nobody wants to do this work anymore. Aside from the owners, there's no employees. We have so many positions open and available. So and that's, industry wide, we're shortage for labor out there, right? The US Commerce says that there is a nationwide shortage for labor. Well, why are we crying COVID hardship impacts when there's a nationwide shortage of employees?
Brandy, thank you for those comments. GSB, not sure who that is, GSB.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm anonymous because I want to move into a house that I own, and I haven't even talked to my tenant yet, and I didn't want to fill out your survey because I don't want to put my name out there because they have all the leverage. I own a small home in San Leandro, and I am paying high rent to my own landlord because I can't live in the house that it's my childhood home. I can't move back in. And so I actually posted a comment just now because I was concerned I wouldn't get to speak, but I think there's a lot. I've spoken to 10 lawyers in the last 2 years, spent thousands of dollars just on consultations. I know it's nothing compared to the folks who haven't received any rent. It's appalling, but someone needs to be collecting the buyout dollars that have been spent. You hear about all these horrible tenant situations. Some landlords get to the point where they're just spending $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. I heard that number from my lawyer. I couldn't believe, I don't have that money. So, I really want to ask that if it's modified, that owner move in, some of these things, that's not an eviction. It never was an eviction. That was never considered an eviction. It's between the tenant and the landlord. But with this, unfortunately, you've given the tenants all the leverage, and those of us that really want to do the right thing, we're kind of up against the wall. So the other comment, and I hope you'll respond to that, Supervisor, but the other comment is you mentioned 60 days after the health order. Nobody's wearing a mask. I wish they were. I don't want to get COVID still, but somehow it's still an emergency. What happens then? Is it like immediate, or then you got to vote and you have to convince the other 3 supervisors? I'd love you to comment on the owner move in and if that's something that you'd consider, but also literally what happens 60 days, then you vote, or, they lift it. Just walk us through that. And I thank you.
So the ordinance as written says that the moratorium would expire at 60 days after the health order is lifted. So whenever that is lifted, 60 days later, it then expires. And at that point, you can move forward unless some other action is taken. With regard to the move in, a landowner would like to move in to their, in your case, childhood home that you've been renting out and want to move back in yourself to take it. I would absolutely consider that as an option for how we might modify the existing eviction moratorium. That, among many other potential modifications, would be something I would advocate for. I do know that if you intend to put it on the market and sell it, that is also currently an opportunity. In fact, I believe that's what earlier comment was, that's driving so many people to sell their property. They may not want to, but they'll 1031 exchange it somewhere into another county or somehow, just sell it because they don't want to lose the property. Their mortgage doesn't stop. They still owe the bank money. So they're forced to sell. And there again, I believe is going to be another unintended consequence. Those houses will come off the market. They will be sold to people that will move in themselves, not rented out to people. And therefore, the supply of rental housing will go down in the long term, probably not even the very long term, in the near short term. That's going to have, homes taken off the market right away. Rudy Schaefer.
You guys can hear me?
Yep.
So I just have a comment, and thank you for taking the time for this dialogue. So I'm a we own a single piece of property. My tenant stopped paying rent December of 2019, before the pandemic. We had started eviction proceeding at that time. And of course, February hit, and this person has not paid rent since December of 2019. We're at a point where we're probably going to be losing the property, because I can't keep making the payments to the bank and the insurance. The guy, the tenant, as I've heard one of the other participants in the meeting make a comment about, he has allowed other people now into the property. He rents the garage out. There's a detached garage. And we're at a point, as I said, that we're getting ready to, I don't know if I can't keep paying the mortgage on that place and on my home. And I say this as a comment, and I got your to send an email to you in regards to these type of situations. But again, I just say this as a comment, and it's like, what are we supposed to do? I tried to get rental assistance. I can't, because we've sent him certified letters to get him to apply for it. He will not do it. He will not have any contact with us. There's a not a pit bull, but there's a fence around the property, and it's done. He has a big Akita, 150-pound Akita that runs around the yard, so we can't get anywhere near it. And my wife and I are at a loss.
Rudy, please send us an email so we can capture that. And I've had the question come into the chat. Can we share the chats with everyone? I would perhaps consider redacting names of people's the chat, but rather having the raw stories and told. So stay tuned for that. Do send us an email as well with your story and the amount of income lost. I do want to clarify, DIST1, tell DIST1 and tell District 1 at acgov.org. Those emails should both work. And so definitely send us the email so we can capture that, and stay tuned for our county CDA team to also be collecting that information. Jules, and then Gerald Halligan, and then I'm just going to say, I'm sorry, we can't get to everybody. I've got a 7 o'clock, another call to take. You can see that our day does not stop at 5 o'clock. And so I want to thank you all for definitely for joining us tonight, but we're going to have to cut it off after the next two, Jules and Gerald Halligan. So Jules.
This is Jules Morris. And thank you so much for fitting me in at the end. I'm at wit's end on finances. I'm retired. I've been retired ever since my tenants moved in. I live in Oregon, but own a rental that was originally built by my grandparents, 1940s, right after World War II. They went out to West to see if there was some work here, and he found a job and started building this house one board at a time back in the late 40s. And I'm at risk of losing the house, which is just kills me. And you earlier said something about health and safety issues might be something that could possibly help me, because what I've got is the tenants, besides the fact that they've been working at the husband has been working at home ever since the beginning of COVID. His wife somehow got support anyhow, even though he was working full time. And they have been paying me $200 a month every month since the beginning of this. And I rely on that money to be able to live. And it's really bad. And I need that money. We're currently, I don't even get what I'm asking for. It doesn't even apply for me. It's the tenants, the sewer, the septic tank was put in 1940s. It's on its last leg. I don't know how I'm going to afford that because I've gone through the math. I've talked to people about estimates of what's going to take to hook it up to the sewer. It was built in the county, but now it's in the city, so I can't replace the septic tank. And I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to pay for the sewer. I don't know how I'm going to pay for the sewer. I don't have that money. I did maybe before this started and before I retired, I could have easily paid for it. But I mean, is that something that the health and safety issues could help me with?
I would say that's something very much worthwhile exploring. Yeah. Septic presents that. Yeah.
Is there some way you could send me that information? I don't know. Do I need to send you my name and address and email? Is that what would work good?
That's the only way I can contact you back. Yes.
Name, address, and
your story.
And story. All right. I will get that to you. Thank you so much for getting me in at the end of this.
Yes. So Gerald Halligan, I was reminded also, I did make a promise to people, two others, Chun Chi and Bill Getz. So I'm going to add those two, Gerald Halligan, then Chun Chi and Bill Getz I had committed to allow to speak earlier. Go ahead, Jules. No.
This is Jules again.
Yeah,
you got me twice.
Gerald Halligan. Yeah, Gerald Halligan. Gerald, you're on mute. Gerald, can you take yourself off mute or can our ITD unmute you? I'm not sure, but right now you're on mute. Let's go to Chun Chi and we'll come back. Chun Chi and then Bill Getz. Chun Chi.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, go ahead, Julie.
Hi, I would just like to say that everything that everybody's saying is absolutely true. We are property managers in Alameda County. We represent about 1,200 units, and we have currently on our delinquency about $1.2 million across 200 of the 1,400 units probably have delinquencies anywhere between $100 and about $30,000. Many of them, and all of the stories that you've heard already, we've had all of those. I think the only one that that I haven't heard is the tenant that we have who is not paid rent for a year and is doesn't live there and is renting out the apartment on Airbnb and making money off the unit and still not paying the rent. We can't even get her to pay her electricity bills that for the electricity that her renters are using. While she's making money on the unit and we can't even get that unit back. And then all of the other things that everybody has said about destroying property, having pets on properties that don't allow pets, smoking everywhere, tenants keeping funds, the COVID relief funds, some are sent to tenants, and we do have one that kept them and did not give them any to the landlord. Tons of tenants that are being super disruptive to other tenants and making our other tenants move out that we can't get rid of. So we can't get rid of the bad tenant. And so we're losing all the good tenants. we have owners that have sold their properties. And even, when we do have a health and safety kind of situation, it used to take 3 to 4 weeks to get rid of somebody in a dangerous situation. Now the court process is so slow that it's taking 3 to 4 months. We had somebody who was messing with the electrical and the gas in the unit, and couldn't even get her out, couldn't even get an eviction on that because it takes the court process, even for a health and safety exception, is taking 3 to 4 months right now. So I guess what I would like to ask, I'm a little confused by, what's going on. Like, I understood, like, when Housing is Key was telling people not to pay their rent. I mean, it didn't help us at all. But I understand that, if they were expecting to pay out money, they, told, and people felt like they needed the money for food or something, but the number of people that they were telling not to pay their rent was frankly frustrating.
Who is Housing is Key, Julie? Is that a city program or that's not something county?
The county, yeah, that's the county program for COVID relief.
Is there a name of a nonprofit that runs that program?
Yes, it's, give me a second and I'm drawing a blank right now.
Somebody put in the chat, that's a state program. I'm not sure if that's it or not. It doesn't sound familiar to me.
Well, so the state program directs everybody through to the county program, and then it's the people processing it in Alameda County, processing the applications that come through that, or we're telling people not to pay their rent.
Got it. Okay.
And then now just today I had one of our landlords, everybody, he's telling him that he can evict people for not paying rent. So he went to the courthouse and talked to the clerks, and the clerks told him absolutely he can submit a paperwork and get an unlawful detainer and get people evicted. And I don't understand why, like, the county employees are telling people that they can do that, and they're going to just either spin their wheels or try to get me to spin my wheels when it's absolutely not allowed. I don't understand why the county employees are telling people. He called and talked to somebody on the phone and they said he could evict people, and then he went to the courthouse and they told him he could evict people, and I don't understand why the county employees aren't informed about what's going on.
I'll certainly pass that specifically along as well. Very important that we are all following the same rules. Maybe they just don't know. So thank you for that. I can certainly understand how somebody would feel that you should be able to evict. So maybe they just got it wrong. I want to make sure, we're going to have to end now, and I'm sorry to Chun-Chi and to Bill. Put it in an email to us. Put it into the chat. We will be downloading the chats so that we have them. We'll be sharing this as broadly as I can. It may necessitate an additional town hall meeting. If I do that and you didn't get a chance to speak, stay tuned for that. Again, people should write their concerns, and as well as help us understand your address and unit number, the contact information to get back to you, and the amount of rent that is owed to you, so that we can keep track of this. But otherwise, also use that email address to send us your story. That's tell district 1 or tell dist1@acgov.org. Both of those emails should work. I want to say thank you again for all the time tonight. I know it's wearing on everybody, myself included. I'm here to listen to you, to help you the best that I can. So stay tuned. I appreciate you all. Thank you, and good night.